Hi there, and welcome to Naturally Recovering Autism. I am your host, Karen Thomas, and I want to thank you so much for being here and being a proactive parent and getting the resources that you need to let your child live their most fulfilling and independent life possible. When my own son was diagnosed with autism, I was told to drug him and try behavioral therapies, and there was nothing else that we could do for him but manage his symptoms the rest of his life. But I didn't want to do that. Fortunately, my background in craniosacral therapy of now 30 years let me know that the brain can and does heal, but I didn't know that much about autism. What I did know is that I didn't want to just mask the symptoms with dangerous drugs. I wanted to find the causes and work with them naturally. And fast forward, it took me a decade and a lot of time and effort, but today my son is no longer diagnosable with autism after being told it could not happen. So I'm here to share with you valuable resources to save you the time and some of the expense that I had to spend to figure it out, and to help you let your child lead to their best results possible. Every child's level of recovery is different, but we know that children who couldn't sleep through the night are sleeping now through the night and happily. Their immune systems are now strong where they were once sick all the time. Children who were nonverbal and their parents were told they could never speak are now speaking. Children who were getting D's and F's in school are getting A's and B's, and those that were so anxious all the time and couldn't sit still and were uncomfortable in their own bodies are now calm and happy and relaxed, and they're leading fulfilling and independent lives with friends. This is what we want for our kids. So I'm here to share the resources with you so that you can get the best results for your child, the best possible. And you can start that right now with my free download of the top 7 foods to eliminate beginning today, of the top foods that are the most inflammatory and toxic that are contributing to those physical and behavioral symptoms of autism that your child is having. They're making his life uncomfortable. So you can get that right now at naturallyrecoveringautism.com/7 foods. And feel free to share that with anybody you know who would be interested. And I will also link to it in today's show notes. There's, of course, a lot more than diet, but this is something you could start doing today that will begin to reduce those symptoms. And I'm happy to share everything I can with you. So right now, let's dive into today's episode. The symptoms of autism can have its own challenges, but when puberty arises and the hormones flush in, we can have a whole new array of symptoms. Puberty brings in many additional challenges for both parents and the children. Beginning around the age of 9, the body triggers hormones to begin puberty. By the age of 14, a noticeable change in behavior is happening. If your child, like mine, has been going along peacefully, but suddenly hormones flush in and they become incredibly difficult to deal with, more aggressive and angry and moody, and all of these issues, they lose motivation when they were maybe going along well and doing well before. All of a sudden, you'll see symptoms really heighten. So let's talk about the two female and male differences. The female hormonal cycle and how it affects behavior. From puberty on, estrogen sets up the cycles in the female brain, such as sleep, mood, body temperature, and even breathing. We're more relaxed in the first 2 weeks of our cycle and have greater social and verbal abilities. Around day 14, progesterone begins affecting the brain's circuitry, and girls become more irritable, have less ability to focus, and they slow down. Progesterone plummets during the last few days of the menstrual cycle, and females can become really stressed, even aggressive and hostile right before their period begins. Low progesterone causes a lack of energy. For females whose bodies have a greater ability to make estrogen and progesterone also have a greater ability to handle stress. This is due to their having more serotonin. This is our feel-good neurochemical. Women with low estrogen and progesterone are more easily stressed, depressed, fearful, and angry because they have less serotonin. Stabilizing serotonin levels helps to calm the brain. And testosterone, the male dominant hormone, can also be too high in females, causing overly aggressive behavior. The effects of male hormones The male hormone testosterone begins flooding into a boy's brain at puberty. It's responsible for aggression and territorial behavior. You may notice that your son doesn't want you to come into their room. They're really personal and territorial at this age, and that has to do with the increase in testosterone in their body. Everything also becomes really boring to them. The teen brain, especially in boys, is difficult to stimulate because his reward center has been almost desensitized. Fortunately, both punishment and reward centers are heightened during this time, so they can be used for motivation. More motivation is needed due to testosterone washing out their reward centers. Testosterone receptors also change the clock schedule in a pubescent boy's brain. Teens are not lazy. They actually need to sleep at least 10 hours per night. They're becoming programmed to stay up later and sleep until noon. And if you're homeschooling, your child has the privilege of getting this extra needed sleep. Traditional school schedules don't allow for this at all, and our kids can't properly adjust to their new internal time clocks. For people on the autism spectrum and those with ADHD, getting up in the morning and going to sleep at night can be really challenging. It's difficult for the brain to actually slow down. And note that girls are affected by testosterone too. Now, some of the things that affect hormones are mainly one of the number one piece is the liver. Most children on the autism spectrum have congested livers and weak detoxification abilities. Now, the liver is our organ of detoxification, our main one. So when the liver is congested, hormones such as estrogen and progesterone cannot be properly broken down and detoxified. This increases their concentration in the blood, and it results in water retention or bloating. Increased estrogen levels have also been linked to breast cancer. Without properly detoxifying and proper detoxification on a regular basis, these and other toxins accumulate in the blood. Oral contraception and hormone replacement increase a woman's chance of developing gallstones because estrogen has a negative effect on the gallbladder's ability to function properly. Menopausal women are greatly benefited by doing liver cleanses and by taking supplements to assist liver health. There are a couple of supplements that can be really helpful, and one that I like is called Liver Detoxification Pathway Elixir, and I'll link to it in today's show notes, which will be at naturallyrecoveringautism.com/142. Liver Detox Pathways Elixir will help both phases 1 and 2 of liver detoxification, which is really important, and it's a very gentle product to use. Again, I will link to it in today's show notes so you can learn more about it. Another thing that really affects hormone levels is the mold biotoxin illness. Over 29% of the world population has a genetic predisposition to their body not being able to expel the toxins from mold. Water damaged buildings and more will contribute to the exposure that then creates a cascade of inflammation in multiple systems of the body. They greatly affect the brain, but also the hormonal system. This is one of the strong co-infections of autism, are the mold biotoxins, and its nickname is actually chronic inflammatory response syndrome. So very, very important to clear mold from your home and properly detoxify mold from the body. Heavy metals. Heavy metals can increase problems with hormones, especially mercury. I would like you to see my podcast interview with an expert I did on natural intracellular heavy metal detoxification, because I link to some studies and we go into the depth of how these heavy metals can affect children with autism and their health and behaviors. And it's really important to know, again, how much heavy metals will affect hormone levels. Additionally, don't overeat. Keep alcohol intake low, eat enough protein, but don't eat excessive amounts of protein or any bad fats. Always eat organic and eat more of the good fats like olive oil and coconut oil and nuts, not peanuts. They're legumes and they actually contain mold. But other nuts are really healthy. And again, they have protein and the good fats in them. So they can be a great snack to carry around. Because pesticides and toxins also congest the liver, you really want to make sure that you're eating healthy foods because diet is very, very important. And in the show notes, I will also be linking to my free 7 foods uh, guide that can help to eliminate many of these toxic foods from your diet and help you understand why they're so inflammatory to the system and why they can affect behaviors as much as they do, and why you and your child might be actually addicted to many of these bad foods. Candida overgrowth is one of those reasons, and it's really common in children with autism. It is often picked up in utero from mom. It's very common that we carry it. It's a major contributor to the development of autism. And Candida pathogenic bacteria will eat sugar in the blood at night, and then the brain doesn't have enough food, which is its blood sugar that feeds the brain. When the brain gets hungry, it signals the adrenal glands to tell the liver to release more glucose into the blood. So the adrenals have now been doing this since birth and they've become worn out. They're completely fatigued. They can no longer do this efficiently, so the brain stays hungry. These cravings for sugar, and it also can wake you up and your child at night from sleeping about 3 a.m. It's really common. This is also known as Candida-induced hypoglycemia. And I've done an entire podcast on this and some tips and tricks that can help you and your child to sleep through the night a little bit better. So I will link to that in today's show notes as well. An imbalance of adrenal hormones can impair the body's ability to grow and to recover from illness and injury. This imbalance also disrupts the body's ability to build and utilize protein or to perform what is known as protein synthesis. Hypoglycemia, or low blood sugar, is a condition that comes from low blood sugar, of course, and low glucose levels. Symptoms you might notice are behavioral outburst, anxiety, lack of ability to think clearly. And this can be because the brain is being starved of its energy supply. An imbalance, again, in adrenal hormones can impair the body's ability to grow and recover from illness and injury. So you want to keep blood sugar balanced with healthy protein sources. And when you combine healthy protein sources with good fats, again, coconut oil, olive oil, things like this, it'll help stabilize the blood sugar for longer periods of time and keep us full longer. That also feeds the brain and the body a lot longer as well. Know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. For brain development, it's important, many people don't know this, that the brain does not stabilize until the early to mid 20s, actually about the age of 25. This is when the brain actually completes development. So it's not even developed until that point. For the parents that worry that their teen or in their early 20s, their child will never get it together, there is hope because it does take time. The part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex, also called the PFC, is responsible for organization, planning, and the awareness of consequences for their actions. So this doesn't develop, again, until about the age of 25. The military is very aware of this. It is why they like to recruit young adults, especially young males, because they know they'll take any risks. And it's why you might notice that your son or daughter, you see it really heavily in boys, why they really will just take risks without seemingly thinking that there are any consequences to what they're doing, which can actually make it a little dangerous. Yes, we know that. The PFC, prefrontal cortex, is also responsible for attention. It can be difficult to get the attention of a male teen or get him to do anything at all. They're really not trying to be difficult. This is also why it's so challenging to get them to do their homework. Boredom comes really quickly, and it can be hard for a male teen to be excited about anything. The reward must be great enough to override the flood of testosterone and vasopressin that are literally dulling their senses. Contrarily, they may seem like they don't care what people think, but they actually really do. Saving face at this age is everything. It's also why you see boys and girls really doing things that they normally might not be doing at other ages, because it's so important to look good in front of your peers. Assisting sleep is really important too, because they need to sleep more and they can have a hard time getting to sleep. One thing that's helpful is to remove video and computer games at least an hour prior to settling down for the night, as those activities stimulate the brain. And it's also important to note that electromagnetic field pollution can also stimulate the brain. So you want to cut these things down, especially before bedtime. In contrast, an electrical reading device like the Kindle has a different light source that doesn't stimulate the part of the brain that keeps you awake. And now they have actually a light control usually on those that you can lower to even make it less stimulatory right before you go to bed at night. If your child can't go to sleep, a Kindle is a better choice than a video game or an iPad. And of course, printed books are wonderful. There are some supplements that can help assist behavior, and I will link to a recent episode that I did on autism and anger, where I talk about some of the reasons why they may have more episodes of that and more on neurotransmitters and supplements to help. So I'm just going to go over these briefly here, but I will link in the show notes to the other episode as well. So supplements to assist behavior, one of them is 5-HTP, also called 5-hydroxytryptophan, 5-HTP for short. It helps to naturally build serotonin levels. This is our king of neurotransmitters and assists in building melatonin, which is the supplement that tells our body, or the hormone that tells our brain that it's time to go to sleep. So if we don't have enough 5-HTP, we have 5-HTP also helps with balancing estrogen levels, mood disorders, sleep, and appetite. So it's really important to help with sleep as well. So 5-HTP can be helpful to take a couple of times a day, once in the morning and once at night. And it's best absorbed away from food. And again, I've got more information here in the show notes, but also on the past podcasts I did that I'll link to, it gets more into depth. But since I've covered that in another episode so deeply, I won't go into it too heavily here. But I do want you to know there are natural ways to assist. And 5-HTP actually works so well, you don't want to combine it with any type of pharmaceutical medications. 5-HTP is used naturally in place of antidepressants and anti-anxieties, and to help stabilize mood. In many, many countries and many places, there are a lot of studies out on it. And also knowing that stress is something else that increases the release of cortisol, which then fatigues the adrenal glands. And sometimes you can see headaches and insomnia, fatigue, anxiety, brain fog, and weight gain, especially around the belly. Imbalanced cortisol affects the sleep-wake cycle. So there's a product called Drenamin from a company called Standard Process that I have found to be helpful for natural adrenal support. And I'll link to that in the show notes so that you can learn more about it. There are some other things we can do, of course. I've done episodes on CBD oil. That can be very, very helpful for calming as well. And low estrogen can also cause brain fog and memory loss. So, it's again why sometimes you can't think clearly. Women who have been through menopause are very aware of this. As the estrogen levels drop, brain fog and memory lapses can be extreme. You can help supplementing with ginkgo biloba. It's safe. It's been used for centuries to assist with brain fog, and it is one of the most studied supplements that exist. Really, you can find tons of studies out there on it. Very, very helpful to take ginkgo biloba once or twice a day. dandelion root, and dandelion is really helpful for helping the liver. It's a natural supplement as well, and you can even drink dandelion tea. There is also an amino acid called L-tyrosine, which builds dopamine. And dopamine is our feel-good chemical. It's something that helps us focus as well. And we get low in things like dopamine and serotonin when the gut isn't working properly and the liver is congested. So again, make sure that you're taking care of your liver and you're eating a good diet. And again, I'll link to this top 7 foods to avoid in the show notes today as well. Again, very important. You might want to, if you add L-tyrosine in when your child is in a PANS flare-up, which is when they have a sudden onset of obsessive compulsive disorder or clinginess and fearfulness, and it's pretty extreme, then that usually causes the body to create a surplus of dopamine. So we don't want to add L-tyrosine. So there are certain things to know about. And of course, as usual, I am just giving information and educational type of information for you here today. This is not meant to diagnose or treat in any way, so you consult a professional. Omega-3 fatty acids can be very, very helpful. They help the brain to, they're neuroprotective, omega-3s. They protect the brain and they help the function of the brain. They also help to reduce inflammation and the cortisol demand and assist in mood and memory. So that can be really helpful as well. And of course, last but never, ever, ever least is the importance of diet. The surge in hormones makes the teen brain more vulnerable to the effects of these chemicals. And of course, the pesticides and the hormones that are put into many of our foods these days. When we eat those foods, we are eating those hormones from what was injected into an animal, and those chemicals that were sprayed on the grain they eat, and the chemicals that were sprayed on the crops, whether it's wheat or soy or corn or anything else. So it's very important to remember that. Monosodium glutamate, also known as MSG, is in a lot of processed food items. Make sure you read your labels. It's even in chips and in sauces and everything. And it affects hormones and increases episodes of anger and rage. And this is true for all ages, but especially true for those on the autism spectrum, and is really heightened during puberty when the hormones are really quite imbalanced. So again, make sure that you're eating healthy. Stay away from food dyes. Food dyes and chemicals. Food dyes also contribute to a lot of health and behavioral problems. There are a lot of chemicals. People are eating these orange colored chips and various things too, or candies, or generally foods that are even just dyed. You also want to stay away from the bad fats like vegetable oils and canola oil and other things. The bad fats will actually deplete us more of the good fats and rob our bodies of things that we need. So make sure that to avoid those as well. Again, I am linking to my free foods guide to the top 7 foods to avoid, which will actually help calmer behaviors, clearer thinking, improving sleep, and really having more peace in your life overall. So I will link that in today's show notes, which will be at naturallyrecoveringautism.com/142, and the direct link to the foods guide if you happen to be listening and or have a chance to jot it down. I'll give it to you, is at naturallyrecoveringautism.com/7 foods. And it's just the number 7 and foods with no spaces in between. So thank you so much for being here and listening, because there are a lot of things that our kids go through that we don't realize that they're having to work hard to really be able to sustain. The chemicals, the toxins, the hormonal imbalances in their body. Nobody wants to be screaming in tantrums all day. And I always say, your child is not an angry child. There are underlying issues that, when they can be resolved through natural detoxification and these things that we can do, changing their diet and helping get rid of these co-infections that are altering their system, then they can come out and be peaceful and calm, think clearly, sleep better, really be who they truly are, because nobody wants to have to live with all of this chaos in their way. And it's hard for the entire family and for mom and dad, for you as well. Make sure that you're practicing these things too, because the whole family needs to get healthy together. If this podcast has been helpful for you, I request please leave me a good review on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you're listening, and tell other people how it's been helpful for you, or that it has been, because there are a lot of parents out there who have children, and a lot of children who are suffering with these types of symptoms and are looking for solutions. And I'm hoping to provide some here in my regular podcast with regular resources that are natural and safe, and can only be helpful. So I hope this is helpful for you. And I appreciate you being here and being a proactive parent and getting these resources to help yourself, your child, and your entire family. So be well, and I will see you very soon.